Welcome back to Presenting for Engineers. This is part 2, the slides you show. If you haven't already watched the intro, the prelude, and part 1, please go look for those videos first. If not, you can just go ahead. You want to go ahead and watch this as a standalone, that's cool as well. If you are not familiar with what Presenting for Engineers, if you're not familiar with Presenting for Engineers, it's a workshop that I delivered to my school back in 2021 for our independent activity period, and I thought, this content is useful, people seem to like it, so that's why I've put it online. With that, let's continue to part 2, the slides you show. Right, most of the content that I have here is in reference to You Suck at PowerPoint by Jesse Desjardins. Absolutely fantastic PowerPoint presentation. It's been a little bit of a Bible for me for the past few years. But of course, your mileage may vary. I really encourage you to go and take a look at it. It doesn't take more than 10 minutes, and I think you'll learn something out of it. So anyway, welcome to part 2, the slides you show, and of course about how you think about other props and tools. Same as last time, we're going to first have our MIT, the most important thing that I need you to take away, even if you forget everything else. Just remember the MIT. It's an abstract rule that will help guide you in thinking about your slides. And of course, we have 3 rules this time because rule of 3, right? It's a lot easier to remember. It'll be L, A, and P, which notice you can actually put the letters together and make lamp. So you'll see the moth keep appearing a few times in this presentation. Just for fun, right? So the most important thing of this section is that you have to own your slides. When you look at a presentation, who's the presenter? It's not the slides. It's you, right? The person in front of it. So you have to own your presentations. You don't let the slides carry you. Too often, it's easy to pass on the burden and responsibility of like engaging the audience to the slide. Please don't do that, right? It detracts from the point of a presentation. You should own your presentation. So that's your MIT. Please don't forget that. Notice that if I read everything on the slide, I'm insulting your intelligence. You're perfectly literate, and notice how you're not paying attention to me anymore. That is the problem when you start to read off your slides and when you start to rely on slides instead of owning your own presentation, right? So don't read off the slide. So this is our MIT. Let's go into the 3 rules that you can use. These are rules or tools that help you, make your slides look a little bit nicer, look a little bit better. And these are things that I apply myself to presentations. So if you like the style, yeah. Anyway, rule number 1, less is more. Oh, this is so important, right? I like to use a lot of white space in my slides because I feel that having a lot of content detracts from what's really important. So that's why I use a lot of white space. It doesn't have to be white space. It can be black, right? It can be any color. The whole point is that you don't want to flood your slide with a crap ton of visual content. Instead, you want to focus on the important stuff, which in this case is like critical stuff like the rule itself and you, the presenter, because remember, you own this presentation, right? So less is more, right? This is one example that you really, it's just a good example of a bad example, right? If I ask you to identify, that particular line that means blank space, I don't think you can because there's just so much going on and there's so much to pass and it's not easy for a brain to latch onto that, right? So please don't do that. Another example of less is more is that if I show you something like this, all you're going to be thinking about is like Red Lobster, Stormy Wednesday Evening. You're not going to be listening to me. You'll be trying to read this shrimp story instead. So please don't do that, right? Rule 1 is less is more. The equivalent idea is that of explaining it like I'm 5. You want to cut away all the unimportant fluff and go back to the most critical understanding and critical parts of your presentation. Apply that kind of mentality to your slides as well, so that your audience doesn't have to find your main point. It's right there. It's right in the middle, and that's all they have to focus on. So rule 1, less is more. Rule 2 is attract, not distract. It's a bit strange, a bit more abstract, and this one is a very major case of your mileage may vary, but this is what I think of like in good slides, right? This is a very attractive slide in the sense that it catches your attention, but it's painfully distracting. So I can't really pay attention. I don't really know what's important. I could be saying important things about it, but you wouldn't be paying attention to it because you will see stars spinning and you see that graphic design is my passion, and that's terrible. Right? This is a terrible set of slides. Like I said, your mileage may vary, but my idea of attract, not distract is that you want to find subtle indicators, subtle touches of class in your slide that show that you've put in a lot more effort than the average Joe into your slides, to show that you care about these little things without being over the top, without being garish, loud and noisy and distracting. You want to attract subtly, like a good watch or a well-tailored suit. Little things like this. Now, so what this means is that you want to go for high quality stuff, right? You don't want to like just slap on Comic Sans in the wrong place in the wrong time. It has a place where it's meant to be, but sometimes it's not meant to be there. So you want to look for high quality fonts, animations and images. And how you do that, right? Like, well, that's for you to find, right? But let me help you out here with some practical advice, practical knowledge for fonts. These are the things I use. You might recognize a few of them from this slide, but notice how that broadly you can split them into a accented variant, a group of accented slides, and a group of like more subdued, more main content kind of a group of more subdued fonts. So these two kinds of fonts, you put them together to create that sense of visual contrast in your slides, so that people can kind of know what to focus on, and it gives you a sense of hierarchy. Right, so we are going to be a little bit more introspective. We're going to meta again, and we'll try to apply that back to the content, right? But specifically, like, you'll notice that, okay, oh, looks like there's an error in this, but I'm not going to bother fixing this because I'm way too tired. But I originally intended for Trajan Pro to be used for that main section. I'll fix it in post, maybe? Nah. And I used a body extra light for the lower part and in a smaller size. So that gives you a sense of visual contrast. Anyway, high quality animations that you can use are morph, push, and fade. These are good in my opinion because they are subtle, but they also imply a sense of direction, and that's good, right? So it's not as jarring as just simply switching the slides itself, but at the same time it doesn't it's not wacky or unnecessary like a spin or a squeeze or a tear. So that's my idea of a high quality animation. Now, one more idea that I like to use is that of like center of mass in the slide, and how that conveys a sense of hierarchy and a sense of dynamism to it. So an example of that is like, in this case, the center of mass of the slide, despite everything being aligned to the center, is that it's clearly on the left, because the main part of this slide is on high quality animations. Now, meanwhile, the details like morph, push, and fade, these are examples. These are not so critical to understanding, and that's why they are in a smaller font. Right. So in this case, of course, when you start using pictures, you have to start thinking about like how much attention, how much sort of attraction, visual mass that the image has. So in my case, I've offset it by using a larger, heavier font, which I believe right now is a Bunch semi-bold. So that's something to bear in mind, right? Then notice how, like in this case, despite the placement of everything, there's still a sort of centeredness to the slide. That's also something to be aware of as well. With that, we can send the morph off and carry on. So, rule 3 is to pilfer. Pilfer means to steal, to take. Right. The reason why I put this as a point is because too often people are comfortable with using default stuff in PowerPoint. No. Like just don't do that, right? Because I mean, you can do it, but if you don't go beyond the defaults, right? If you don't take the time to look for like other fonts that you're comfortable with and you're happy with, you'll be very limited in terms of the expressions that you can have. everything you need to do a good presentation is out there. So if you want like good fonts, you have all these places to go to. If you have good images, you can use Unsplash, Pixabay. Personally, I've used Unsplash for everything in this set of presentations. So, you know, and design ideas, even PowerPoint now gives you, it suggests design ideas to you. Some of them are pretty wacky, some of them are pretty non-standard, but it's a good way of you know, getting a bit of inspiration. So everything you need out there, you don't really have to like pay much for it. Just you know, remember to credit people, of course, if you want to use their material. So our second exercise is tailored thievery. For the next 10 minutes, find two fonts that you like. One as your main font and one as your accent font. Right, which means your main font is where you have most of your content. Your accent font is going to be whatever is more fancy and more eye-catching. You don't need to take 10 minutes, go and find, but the most important thing is that I want you to take these fonts and, you know, decide like, okay, I'm going to use these for, you know, my future presentations, because it helps also give a sense of continuity through your presentations, and it helps to implant the sense of, how about this, it defines your style. So there's that. Okay, with that, we'll just skip the exercise. You want to pause, you want to do it, go ahead. If not, we'll just move on. All right, so part 2 was the slides you show. We are really at the end of the slide, so let's just go through everything. The most important thing is that you need to own your presentation, right? Regardless of you know how good your content is, if you throw it all onto the slides, people are not going to pay attention to you, and that's very lazy. You want to give a good presentation, if you want people to look at you and think, okay, that was a good presenter, you have to own your presentation. The 3 rules that I've given you to help you achieve, you know, superior slide quality is that 1, less is more. You don't want to fill your slide with a whole ton of visual content and distract your audience. No, cut down on the crap. You focus them on the critical parts and go for that, you know, very clean, less is more look. Attract, not distract. When you want your slides to look good, don't do it in a way that's loud and garish. Granted, your mileage may vary, but definitely focusing on a few, you know, high quality components is going to show people that you put effort into your slides without detracting from less is more. Now, part 3 is pilfer. Everything you need to make a good set of slides is out there for you to acquire. So the most important thing is that you take the time to be discontent with default settings. Don't be using Calibri Light for everything and all that, but instead go and find something that really suits you and use it consistently over and over again. Right? That way, you know, you've sort of set up for your own success, because you end up developing a sort of your own brand. Yeah. So with that, we've come to the end of part 2, the slides you show.